Early on Thursday, September the 8th, 2022, at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, news was spreading quickly throughout the royal family's inner circle that Queen Elizabeth II's health was failing, and a succession plan codenamed Operation Spring Tide would soon need to be put into motion. Throughout the day, news of the Queen's dire situation leaked out. Just before 6:30 British Standard Time, a bulletin went out to the Church of England, the Metropolitan Police Services, the British Armed Forces, and a few others. London Bridge is down. London Bridge is down. Then at 18:30, which was 6:30 p.m. British Standard Time, Buckingham Palace made an official statement via Twitter. The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. News of the Queen's death sent shockwaves instantly around the globe. For millions of people around the world, Queen Elizabeth II was a symbol of strength, peace, and prosperity. She became the longest-serving monarch, having just celebrated her Platinum Jubilee in June. She was the last remaining tied to a bygone era. In the days since her passing, her supporters have flocked to social media, praising her for her accomplishments, while ignoring her, well, let's say, questionable acts. What are those questionable acts? Could some of the rumors actually be true? What happened behind the curtain at Buckingham Palace that the royal family doesn't want us to know? And that's where we begin this week's episode of Science vs. Conspiracy. Brew some coffee and pull up a chair. Open your mind, because Science vs. Conspiracy talked the secret life of Queen Elizabeth II over coffee. Being the head of state for over 70 years, there are bound to be some skeletons in the closet, and a lot of bodies buried. As I mentioned earlier, the Queen had received a lot of praise. She isn't without scandal. She's been accused of being a shape-shifting reptile, a satanic cannibal. She eats her corgis to extend her life. She's been a Nazi sympathizer and had a part in Princess Diana's death. Or that time she looked the other way while her son, Prince Andrew, had that little sex charge trafficking scandal thingy with Jeffrey Epstein. Yes, that's something that actually happened. Is there truth to any of these stories? How and why did these stories get started? How do you separate fact from fiction? Let's start with the undisputed facts, and leave the shape-shifting reptilian corgi-eating cousin marrying for another episode. With Operation Spring Tide already underway, Operations London Bridge, Unicorn, and Golden Orb were also initiated. This Monday, 3 days from now, September 19th, 2022, funeral service will take place at Westminster Abbey. At the time of her passing, she was 96 years old, ending her 70-year reign. After the funeral service, her remains will then be interned in a lead-lined coffin placed in King George VI Memorial Chapel at St. George's. Here, she will rest with other members of the royal family for eternity. So here's a couple of fun facts about the funeral. The UK is projected to spend an estimated $9 million on the Queen's funeral, even though the country is headed towards recession and the cost of living is skyrocketing. Over 2 million people in the UK can't afford to eat every day. An estimated 800,000 lower-income children are unable to access free school meals, which only costs $2.85 per child, because of caps that disqualify 30% of children in poverty. The UK is spending millions on her funeral, while about 1 in 3 children now live in poverty. 81% of schools report the rise in child hunger. And with school meal programs, schools are having to cut meal sizes and use less healthy ingredients due to the rising costs of food. And if you've ever lost a loved one and received an inheritance, you'll know that a large chunk of that money is withheld by the government. The British royals have an estimated $28 billion fortune. This includes private holdings, and land holdings. King Charles will inherit $500 million from the Queen without paying the inheritance tax like everybody else does. And the taxpayers, they're also on the hook for the funeral. They'll be picking up the tab. So what do you guys think? Just a bunch of coincidences or something more troubling? Let me know in the comments. If you like the podcast, leave a comment and a review on your favorite podcast platform. Let us know what you think of the show. I'll be back here next week with a closer look at the occult and mysticism of the royal family. Remember, being paranoid is smart. We'll see you next time.